After the atrocity that was Assassin's Creed Unity at launch, Ubisoft sought to spin Assassin's Creed on its head, and then Assassin's Creed Syndicate came out to dwindling sales, so I imagine that reinforced Ubisoft's thought of needing to reinvent Assassin's Creed. And the people that were up to that task were the Montreal branch of Ubisoft, who had previously worked on Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which from conversations I've seen online, I'm led to believe that it's the fan favorite in the series. And the two directors from Black Flag returned to that role for Assassin's Creed Origins. The setting of ancient Egypt was one of the quickest things the team decided on because they wanted to go so far back in time for the Origins. And they spent about 2 of the 4 years the game was in development prototyping with historians and Egyptologists on standby to help build a credible version of Egypt that they could still weave their own lore and such into. Given the ambition of the project, Ubisoft was gracious enough to grant the team an extra year to work on it, which doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but for Ubisoft that meant they wouldn't have a mainline game in 2016 in a franchise that had been yearly since 2009. Ubisoft also started a new thing in their company that's essentially co-development, where there would be one main development team, but the other studios could chip in for other stuff to help speed up development. The team would finally get to show the fruits of their labor at E3 2017, where they had a big blowout, which to me exuded confidence because there was no CG-only trailer. They showed an in-engine cinematic trailer and then immediately followed that up with a gameplay trailer, and visually the game looked great. They also did a good job at showing all of the changes from previous AC games, like Eagle Vision being an actual eagle, and they showcased various weapons and skills you'll unlock in AC Origins, although, in hindsight, maybe they should have chosen a later part in the game or just cranked Bayek's level up, since most of the stuff they show you literally can't get at the level they have him at. But hindsight doesn't matter, as in the moment, everyone seemed pretty excited, at least judging by the comments. Thankfully, no one would have to wait that long to play it, as it came out 4 months after E3 to pretty good reception, and me playing Breath of the Wild made me a bit more interested in the game because it seemed to give a similar level of freedom. And I was excited at the initial announcement anyway because I had a love of ancient Egypt in school, but after putting a few hours into it, I realized it didn't quite offer what I wanted in terms of exploration, since certain areas were higher level than others, so I bounced off AC Origins and wouldn't return until a few years later I made my grand return and made it about 15 hours in the game before jumping ship yet again, but not out of distaste this time. There was just other games I wanted to play, but hey, they say third time's the charm, so I decided to give it one final go. And this time I saw the game the entire way through, and that's the experience I'll be telling you about in this video. So without further ado, let's get into the new era of Assassin's Creed. Bayek is a Magi who are warriors with elite skill appointed as protectors of the Pharaoh and Egypt. Or at least they used to be until the Romans took over, and there was no real need for them anymore as Romans could take over their jobs, so they phased out of existence, save for Bayek, who managed to stay hidden away from the Ptolemies that sought to kill Magi, though he was only able to stay in the shadows for so long. Moments before Ptolemy XIII's arrival in Siwa, Bayek took his son Khemu hunting before they're so rudely interrupted by another kid who found a hyena cave and wanted to explore it with Khemu. Thankfully that was shut down pretty quick by Bayek, who insisted on taking them both on a hunt, which is when things hit the fan. Before they went back home from a successful hunt, Bayek deems it necessary to help Khemu face his fears, but he would face a different kind of fear as he gets kidnapped, with Bayek following shortly behind after failing to take out the captors. And then Bayek's whole world goes red once his son frees him because he tries to take out the masked figure, but he redirects his blade to his son. Bayek then exiles himself from Siwa, spending restless days tracking down the 5 masked people that killed his son until he finally got his hands on one.
Everyone who sniffed the air that day in Siwa!
Thus, his journey of vengeance starts, and you'll travel across most of Egypt, occasionally making love with his wife, and meeting a lot of political figures like Cleopatra, who gives you the latest news on where your targets are, along with the breakdown of who they are. Basically, they're a secret society under the name Order of the Ancients, which would later become the Templars, and they hold a lot of power over Egypt. They can get effectively any person of power to do their bidding, which is not good, so that's further motivation for Bayek and Aya to pursue them. This doesn't last forever though, as Bayek starts to doubt Cleopatra, since no matter how many guys he kills, she somehow has another one lined up that isn't the man that killed his son, so Bayek starts to get fed up. Me too, man, me too. That was definitely one of the reasons why I bounced off the game before, because they just kept giving you people to kill after finishing off a row, and it just burnt me out. The same happened with this playthrough as well. Had they just showed all the people you had to kill at the start, I think that would have prevented a lot of my burnout. I did thoroughly enjoy the story, although it lost me a bit in the latter half because it feels a little rushed in how they kill off some of the later targets, and the final boss feels a little off the rocker compared to the rest of the game, which is fairly grounded. And while the themes aren't anything new, it's just a story about revenge and justice, it's done in an interesting way and has enough depth that I'm sure there's a lot of subtleties in it that I missed. Exploring Egypt feels surreal, as I'll probably never get this close to actually setting foot in it. Most of my time in AC Origins was just taking time to soak everything in because fuck, it's gorgeous. I didn't think I could enjoy looking at barren desert as much as I did, but man, this game just has so many sights and opportunities for photo mode, and the first time I got into grasslands, it was just wow. It was so vibrant, pretty, and the animators knew exactly how I'd feel because if you walk in, Grass Bayek will run his fingers through it. Although there is one significant downgrade from previous AC games, that being the parkour, because there's essentially none of it. You can climb. Yep. The tutorial shows that you can vault over stuff, but very rarely do you ever do that in game. Even the climbing itself isn't great, as you just hold up and somehow it's unresponsive. A lot of the time it can take upwards of like 5 seconds for Bayek just to move to the side, and in a 35-hour playthrough, yeah, it can get annoying. On the flip side of that, Assassin's Creed Origins is really good at giving the feeling of crossing the country. You only get your feet in a mount to check the land, seeing a plethora of villages, towns, and cities along the way, all of which are fascinating to walk through because there's so many cultures and religions even in one city. And while I don't remember any of the music because it doesn't play much and is honestly just atmospheric stuff, it still helped enhance the overall vibes of the world. I was also intrigued enough to go off the beaten path for things like synchronization points or whittling down the local wildlife for reasons I'll get into in a bit. But what interested me the most was all the question marks scattered around the map, but I'll save my thoughts for that a little later as well. What I can't save my thoughts on are the tombs, which feel unreal to explore. The lighting, or lack thereof, and the claustrophobic walls give off a mysterious and spooky vibe, and who knows what you might find. Snakes! There's lots of treasure to pillage as well, along with a tablet that gives a skill point free of charge. Naturally, in a world of this size, you're bound to find one or a few or a lot of NPCs that need help, and the side quests are quite high quality. They're all voiced and have some decent stories. Some range on the funny side, like a woman who won't shut up about how much dick she gets, but a vast majority of them are pretty depressing. A lot of them involve people losing their children or saving brutally beaten people from captivity, and a special collaboration mission with Final Fantasy 15 that gives you one of the most cursed things I've ever laid my eyes on. I was genuinely invested in them that during the beginning when the story hadn't gripped me yet, I chose to do side quests just because they were more interesting. But then a switch flipped, and I don't think burnout has ever hit me harder and faster in a game. Once the story had my full attention, I just stopped doing everything. In fact, I dreaded doing side quests in the latter half because they can take upwards of 20 minutes to complete with the dialogue included, so I started skipping that. But then I was left with just the few repeating tasks they can have of go to this camp and save this person or kill this general. And all I wanted to do was see how the game ended, but you're forced to do side quests a lot because progression is gated by level, which also kills the pacing. The intrigue for wanting to see what was at question marks was also killed since I didn't care to see my 50th animal layer. There seems to be a recurring theme in this game where I find something fun to do at the beginning and then just drop off it like a brick in the ocean. That being said, I'm happy to announce that the combat is just fun. In an attempt to add more freedom to the series, Ubisoft added more in-depth action combat for if you get caught during stealth or just don't want to do it at all, and you have a myriad of weapons to choose from to fit your playstyle, from regular swords, maces, spears, or twin daggers, each having one of two specials that either do big damage or let you attack quicker, and they'll all get chucked about like a cheap hooker since you'll constantly be finding new gear with varying perks and rarities, but you can continuously upgrade any that you find will work for the rest of the game. There's also the addition of a skill tree for weapons, bows, and stealth, depending on how you want to play, and a lot of it is pretty helpful, like being able to push enemies off cliffs and such, time slowing down when getting a headshot with a bow, or chain assassinations. As mentioned earlier, you can hunt down the local wildlife, and the reason for wanting to is for upgrades to Bayek's various accessories like his breastplate to give him more HP, his pouch that raises tool capacity, or the hidden blade so it deals more damage. And while the constant upgrades feel great, it unfortunately didn't stop the combat from getting the curse of becoming stale halfway through, as I found it pretty trivial. Stealth ends up feeling inconsequential since you can hold your own in a battle even without that great of gear, but to be honest, stealth or fighting head on wasn't the best approach to combat. It was actually something in between. One of the first skills you can get on the stealth skill tree is sleep darts, which make everything so much easier, especially with upgraded pouch capacity. And you can just start yucking them at anyone chasing you and insta-kill them, and that was just the best strategy for like any encounter that had more than like 4 people, because it was just so easy. Obviously this is a byproduct of burnout for me. If I wasn't, I definitely would have just done combat and stealth normally. To not end everything on a low note, I will say the bosses left me pleasantly surprised. They're not crazy good or anything, I just went in with the expectation they'd all be stealth missions, but they all offer something different. And it's not so black and white as you're led to believe, since some of the quote-unquote villains are just doing what they're told for their own needs, like the hyena who just wants to save her daughter and in a desperate need does a whole sacrificial ritual for a god to bring her back. Also, I randomly ran into an Anubis boss fight, which is essentially a MMO raid battle, and was pretty cool. It was fairly simple, but it just being pretty outlandish was a nice change of pace. Assassin's Creed Origins. I'm glad I finally finished it after all these years, even if it's just to confidently say that modern AC games just aren't for me. Unless the later games fix the structure or progression, because the real problem I had was just that quests take upwards of 20 minutes to complete, and if they just sprinkled in some smaller ones that are essentially fetch quests, I wouldn't have gotten burnt out so quickly. And normally I'd cover all of a game's content, which just means DLC if there is any, but since I was on my hands and knees begging to be done by the end, I figured it best to not put myself through more of the game, and by proxy you won't have to hear me bitching about it longer. I'm glad I didn't go through with my original plan for this video, which was to cover every single modern AC game, so Origins up to Shadows, but thank God I changed my mind on that because it probably would have turned into a suicide note by the end. But anyway, I'll get out of your ear now, so that does it for this video, and I'll see you all in whatever comes next, so make sure you subscribe if you don't want to miss what weird and wacky game I'll play next. Bye bye!